sit down. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Why do you suppose that prayer, that contemplation is repeated, is spoken before the teachings? Why do you suppose that is? Anyone? What's the benefit of it?
To get you ready to receive the words.
And how do you get ready? What does that mean? To prepare what?
The mind, your intellect.
And you were saying?
I said to be aware.
To be aware, yeah, to be present. Indeed. And it's, so in Sanskrit, but also in English, there's a vibrational element to it, right? The sound has a reality, not just the words. We were last night in our satsang in Prescott. We were taking some time. We tend to live a symbolic life, not a real life. We tend to live a symbolic life. All caught up in our own limited idea of what all of these are. When we ask, what does it mean? We're just asking for what are the words that go with it. So that I can relate to it based upon my own limited experience. This is the mind stuff. With worldly mind meaning the mind very much engaged still in outward seeking with the objects, the names and the forms, Namarupa, then this is what it's doing. And so we were taking some time with it yesterday evening, and in the discussion, and we're reading the Raja Yoga Sutras. And of course, Raja Yoga Sutras is both study of mind and the recipe, the science of converting the mind from, as Lord Krishna says, from enemy to friend. Mind itself is neutral, but it behaves as if an enemy. And that's when it's all caught up in the symbolic. And if you look our entire lives, the potential is there for us to be caught up in this symbolic thinking all of the time. Right? Again, the eyes go to an object, and how long before the name of the object arises in the mind? And now you've accepted the name and the story as the reality of the object, right? And so here in the Gita and in the other teachings, Upanishads, Bible, all of Quran, all of these, the offering is to come out of that symbolic and to dive deeper to recognize the underlying reality, which is the real reality of what the mind will label in and of itself, right? It'll label it, and then we live an as-if life. Not a real life. Really, you see, not a real life, an as if life. As if all of this is what this limited instrument takes it to be. And we get in arguments and we fight with people and we start wars and we get aggravated. All the time we get aggravated, The judgment is there. But if you look at the judgment, it's all about the symbols and someone else having a different meaning for them in their limited instrument than we have in ours, and therefore prioritizing their lives differently, right? Making different choices than we do, because they see some object as more important than you do. You see some other object as more important than they do. But no one's seeing the real. We're just all caught up in our heads and our own limited ideas of what it is. So symbolic thought. Symbolic thought is one of the five types of thought studied in Raja Yoga Sutras. But really it's the predominant thought. And the first type of vritti that's mentioned, of course, is right knowledge. Right knowledge, which really is contemplation on truth. And so the reason for the prayer is to help us to get out of ourselves. And in this symbolic state, daydreams are coming and we lose ourselves and our awareness goes here and there. But it's just in the story. And the story is just my story. It's just my idea. Right? My stuff. My world. My little world. So these and the opportunity for us is when we come to it to actually bring our awareness into the prayer, to be present with it, because otherwise the daydreaming continues. Yes, Kartikeya? Yeah. Otherwise the daydreaming continues, and you're back in your own ideas and your own stuff.
Dream world.
Yeah. And your own dream, your own personal dream world.
Yes. Reading that last night. Destroy imagination, destroy the mind.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what it means. Open it. Like, use a vice and open it. And by doing so, break this process that's enslaving you.
It's hard.
Where every is about, it's a cup, there's tea in it. Break it. Break it. And how do you break it? Well, study, introspection. Really genuinely in the practices, really genuinely engaging in them. Because whenever you genuinely bring your awareness, intense awareness into a practice, then you're breaking that process. You're breaking it. You're going deeper than the name and the form. And you're stopping the incessant wandering from one to another. Okay. So we come to and of course this is the point. Lord is wanting us, whatever name we use, we say Lord, right? But the highest consciousness is wanting us to recognize our own reality and the reality that we are in, because we forgot it. And we've fallen. In the Christian tradition is the idea of the fall of man with the original sin, the fall. And this fall is this fall. It's falling into this symbolic life.
Yeah.
This unreal existence, this make-believe. And it's a terrible fairy tale because there's no happiness in it. the good fairy tale is the one that has happiness ever after. But for us, as long as we live a symbolic life, it remains elusive. It just remains, some idea out there, and I'll live my life for it. But as long as I live a symbolic life, a dream life, then it's not possible. And so here, the effort is to wake us up and also to help us to dive deeper and see more deeply. And that's where we pick up this morning, because we're in this part of the Gita where the Lord is helping us to see how the one permeates all, helping us to see, like that practice on the wall, the real every moment, and not lose ourselves to the symbolic stuff, and not go back into that dead life, right? These last 6 chapters are really about this, for us to make the connection between ourselves and the divine, and everywhere. And really it's the science of yoga from a philosophical standpoint, and also the ability to actualize it. It's really the science of it. What's amazing is generally speaking, when people get into religious thought, we tend to hold on to a doctrine in the same way that we hold on to our ideas of the symbols. We tend to hold on to the doctrine, and so we end up, for example, we still have this argument in Christian circles, in Christian communities in the world, and certainly in America, where the Bible says, so we hear creation, and science says evolution. Well, it appears that there's creation, and it appears that there is evolution. So inquiring mind would say, what is it really? And what is it that appears as these two? And that's actually what Lord Krishna is discussing here in this 15th chapter, in this supreme yoga of the Supreme Spirit. That's actually, it's interesting that what's being discussed now is supported by science, not the other way around. Yeah? And helps one to actually come to an understanding of the divinity of life, the real true divinity of this life, in a way that's not contradictory with the science. Okay. So we come here. These are the last 2 slokas in the chapter, 19 and 20. He who undiluted knows me thus as the highest Purusha, he, knowing all, worships me with his whole being. And the Sanskrit word is sarva bhavana. The attitude, the inner attitude, or the inner bhava of the one being the all, and giving one's life to the one. That's what worship is, right? Worship is not just saying a prayer. Worship is being a prayer. Yeah? Thus, the most secret science has been taught by me. O sinless one, on knowing this, a man becomes wise and all his duties are accomplished. So, meaning, we're always wondering, what's the end? What's the end? That's the end.
Action in action.
Yes. So we'll read the commentary. Beautiful commentary. He who knows the unobvious. What does unobvious mean? It's a word you don't hear.
Not obvious.
Not obvious. There you go. So veiled. He who knows the unobvious sustaining reality knows that God alone pervades all, and that he is beyond all limitations, beyond maya or illusion, and avidya or ignorance. God is the substratum of the jiva, the individual soul, that living soul and perishable person, as well as of the atma, the imperishable or purusha. So again, coming back to those three, the three levels, as it were, of the one real. We used the ocean yesterday as an example. So one ocean, waves, that aspect of the ocean that's closer to the waves, from which the waves are sustained, from which the waves rise, yes? And that depth, which doesn't even circulate, but all ocean, all water. And in the same way, if you can visualize this purusha, this absolute, in a similar way, it helps. So the perishable, the changing, the appearing this way and that way, the imperishable, which is potential, exists as pure and absolute potential, and within it, potential for everything, including the white tambourine. Yeah, I found. And then that which sustains, which is of the nature of absolute peace. Highest consciousness, not engaged in thought, not engaged in becoming at all, solid underlying, sustaining, in the same way that the rest of the ocean sits on that depth. So remember, we're talking about the three, which are the one. And then recognizing this unobvious sustaining reality. So developing the capacity to see it, even though it's not obvious. We're all learning to see things that are not obvious. Is it so? Yeah. It doesn't seem obvious at the beginning that this drink is going to cause me to suffer, because it seems good. So, yes, Hara, there would have been that time, correct?
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So unobvious, not obvious at the time. You had to learn it.
Hard way.
Yeah, and once you learn it, then is it clear to you?
Free.
In the same way, that's why we say intellect, use of the intellect, purify the intellect, and then using the intellect in order to see it and recognize it is always here, unchanging. And then he says, however, and then here's a little secret. We always talk about God inside, and now he's going to take a pin to the balloon. That idea, God is inside. He says, however, God is in neither jiva nor atma, for though the waves are part of the ocean is not part of the waves. Such knowledge cures delusion, making evident the unreality of distinction between the three, which is born of ignorance, and that the loss of jivahood is supreme gain, heralding the realization that the substratum of the immortal Atman is the infinite being.
Yes.
So it seems like God is inside, but it only seems that way because God is all. Mm-hmm. This is that curious when we read today. We'll pick up Isha Upanishad today again. Yeah. And you remember when we read it all the way through, the short one, and we got to that point where the teacher said, to darkness goes the one who only goes outside in the material, and to greater darkness goes the one who only goes inside to find spirit. Why is that? Because spirit is everywhere.
Right.
Spirit is all there is. God is all there is. We're dealing with one of the three levels. But all there is God. Recognizing the deepest level, identifying with the deepest level, but also seeing that it's all God. And that deepest exists, but whatever you see is just a level of God. So of course God can be found inside. But the situation is not that God is inside. It is that all of this is permeated by God.
Right.
So it's more true that we as an individual are in God than it is that God is in me as an individual. Right? So this is what Lord Krishna is saying. This is the great science, the great secret. Even when we come to meditate in order to find God within, this is why it said we have to then open up, expand outwards, because it's incomplete. It's incomplete. And as long as we're only able to relate to God being within, then we'll continue to get shocked and we'll continue to have fear and all of this, because there will be this notion that without is unknown. Without is scary. Within is safe.
It's just that the unity and the oneness is at the depth, so it's at the bottom of the ocean, we would say.
But in every. So it's unseen by the senses, but it's known to be the underlying reality in the atom, in the speck of dust, in the wave, in the sound, in the unmanifest, even. So it doesn't have to be found somewhere. And it's not something we wait for, it's something we are.
Yes. Discovery.
So this infinite being, he continues, he says, this infinite being is the all in all. Bhakti Yoga prescribes 5 attitudes which the devotee can adopt towards God. And now comes to devotion. And devotion, upon this knowledge, devotion will naturally come. But to the extent that you can encourage devotion, that's helpful. It's greatly helpful. You described to me a few days ago, you went to Durga called you, and what happened, right? And she's trying to crack your heart open too,
Yeah.
Yes? You recognize that? Yeah. To see me, know me, everywhere. Like this. And that's leading towards devotion. Well, for that which takes itself to be separate, and then begins to learn that it's not separate, how to integrate. So the child who's been looking for mother forever, had lost mother, and then finds out that mother is right here, what to do? Well, as long as you recognize mother is right here, the child still remains apart. So what's left to do is to hold on to mother and not let go. That's called devotion. The mind, it's an even better example here when we look at this inner world. The mind, which took itself to be separate. Intellect took itself to be separate. It was judging everything, judging everyone, trying to satisfy the ego so that it could create a world where I'm the king and everyone worships me. All this time. And then the intellect begins to realize, wait a second, this is false. I'm not separate. And all of this is a pretense, and if I keep it up, then I just continue to suffer. And so the intellect beginning to wake up and this is what awakening is, right? It's the intellect beginning to wake up, beginning to realize. And then what to do about it? Well, just like the child, Mother is here. Mother, I am thine, all is thine. I do not wish to stray from thee again. Devotion, worship. And now how do I relate to? And that's where the 5 modes of bhakti that he brings up comes in. How can I relate to you? So that intellect, this is the intellect asking this question. How can I relate to you in order not to stray again?
I had a question on the all is thine and I am thine.
Yes.
What about for someone that wants to approach the same but has fear of death, is not there yet, and that statement is shaking that fear of death? Is there another way to put it in words? Or maybe I'm not tapping into that.
Well, it's the intellect talking with its mother. It's the intellect talking with the light. There's no separation. There are levels. It's the wave talking with the potential or talking with the depth. I am thee. I am thine. I am of you. I serve no other master. This ego notion I do not serve. The ignorance that arises, I do not serve it. I serve you alone. Intellect speaking to the light. Because I am you. I'd forgotten. I am your right hand. Use me as you will. I am your very own thought process. Use me. It's an aspect of speaking back to the whole. That resonated somewhere? Mm-hmm. An aspect of speaking back to the whole. An instrument. It's like the pencil recognizing, wait a second, I'm just a pencil. It's fine when I'm held and written. In fact, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so the intellect recognizes, wait a second, I'm just the mental function of yours. I'm your mind. Wow. I do not wish to lose this information. I do not wish to forget. And by the way, when you use me, it's all fine. When the intuition uses the intellect, is it pretty good? Is it okay? Is life okay? This is what we're talking about. So you could say the intellect, the conscious mind speaking to the light, which is the intuition. I'm yours. Please help me not to forget. Please use me in a way where I never forget again. I don't want to drift off. I don't want to imagine that I'm separate from you again. I don't know. Is that helpful in some way?
Yes.
It's really the inner stuff. It's the inner person, the inner world, not the outer world, right? It's the inner. The hand wants to do its own thing. And you don't want it to do this. Now, some people actually have this stuff. I mean, some people, their hands will do something other than what they want them to do. You ever met anyone who has that kind of a thing happening? Or some limb or some instrument? Yeah. And so who suffers? Well, the hand suffers, and the person who's wanting it to do something else at some level is suffering as well. And then one day the hand says, wait a second, this non-cooperation is not getting me anywhere. I'm your hand. Let me be thy hand. And then what happens? Thy will be done. Use me as you wish. And then, by the way, the hand is fine after that. In the same way, this intellect is God's intellect. This mind is God's mind. These thoughts are God's thoughts. This breath is God's breath. These children are God's children. These atoms are God's atoms.
That made me think of the people that have OCD, they gotta touch the knob 80 times before they move on to the next step.
Yes, this is us.
Yeah.
That's the mind. Yeah. That's why I asked the question, why did it take 1,000 water bottles when I was walking across the desert to realize the reality here? And to realize that I am thine. I'm your hand. Use me as you will. And as soon as the intellect does that, as soon as it really does that,
Yes.
life is a flow. It says this. Life is a flow. It's okay. I remember this sigh that shook everything. It was in Pennsylvania on the coast to coast. It was, I'm not in charge. And that's perfect.
Just see it. Yes.
Use me as you will. So.
Oh, that's what I felt when I really wanted kids, more kids.
Yes, too.
And then just to realize, well, I don't even know if that's good. Just that relief that I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
Also made me let go of that wanting or desire or attachment.
Oh.
The same with what I was talking to you the other day.
Yes.
The expectation of how things
That's it.
can go in workshops or anything.
Yeah. And that is intellect when it's cut asunder. It's in that state of I have to do it. I have to do it. And then how will it work out? Will I be happy or will I not? Right? But then upon the recognition that, wait, I am one with thee. I'm like the ray and you're the sun. I'm not separate. Essentially, I'm you. Everything that I've taken to be mine is you. And it's okay. And I'll serve the role, whatever you wish. It's fine. I might not like it, but I'll love it. And so the 5 modes of bhakti, and we'll pick up there in the morning as it relates to the closure on this chapter. But this is it. I've been swimming in the sea of me forever. And there's nothing I could do not to be swimming in the sea of me. You're me, you're me, you're me. In the highest sense. In the highest sense. What's to be afraid of? What's the problem? So I find that relating intellect. When I say I, there's the I which is transcendent. And we're aware of this. But by the time I start to speak, I'm out of it. I'm very much aware of it. I'm centered in it. But when the voice comes, now you're hearing a message coming through, as it were. And so when I say I hear, still there's a relationship with intellect. If you reflect, you're still going to see, and this is Savikalpa Samadhi, by the way. When you see the one everywhere, then that's what's called Savikalpa Samadhi. So there's non-disturbance, there's peace. There's not an issue. There's the ability to be centered and to keep to the center, but also engage with all. And how do we engage with all? Well, all are aspects of the same. Aspects of the same. And in this way, not higher or lower. Right? God is in each one. From an intellect, I will say that I find it easier to relate to God because I have to relate to something. As the intellect, I have to relate to something. Does that make any sense? As the intellect, as conscious mind, I have to relate to something. I used to relate to the ego sense. I took my reality and my orders from the ego sense. I followed it. I believed in it. I hadn't investigated. I hadn't checked it out. But life made me check it out. Suffering, the grace of suffering, it made me check it out. Because I realized at some point, I can't trust you. You don't know. This is ego sense speaking to this. And so we go on this discovery. And then I, still speaking as conscious mind, discover the light. And then all there is the light. Well then, why am I working for the shadow? If all there is the light. Right? This doesn't make any sense. And that's really where the I am thine, all is thine came. And it's an inner mantra that the conscious mind repeats, that I repeat as conscious mind. Just to make sure that I don't get out of alignment. Is that? No. Oh. So for conscious mind, there's a relation. But then if we have a philosophical discussion and say, what is here really? Then we'll say, well, all is the light. All is the light. But there's a practical question of how to relate to it. And if you're talking about relation, now you're talking about conscious mind, because the Absolute has no need to relate. In the deepest sense, at the sea, there's no mental activity, there's no need to relate one way or the other, and that's your deepest reality. That is your deepest reality. You are the ocean. You're all the levels of it. You're the depth of it. You are the unmanifest, and you are that which manifests. You are all of it. But here we say God. And in the inner, to relate, to have the ability to relate to God, for the conscious mind, because the conscious mind needs something to hold on to, right? And to hold on to the ego sense is like exhausting. Bull in the china shop. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. We're just relating because the question will be non-duality. Well, the reality is non-dual. Reality is non-dual. There are not two here. There's only the one. Appearing is this and appearing is that. And the science and what we're working through is to see if we can develop an understanding as conscious mind of what this means and how it looks and how to relate to the highest and how to find the highest and how to make the connection between the highest and me as conscious mind, right? I am thee. But it's not really that. It's not that I am you in a limited sense. It's that you are me. If I'm a drop of water, then you, the ocean, are me. Oh, okay. Enough for this morning. We're wanting always to make it practical. Otherwise, it just stands as high philosophy.
So the drop can only say, I'm the ocean when it goes back into the ocean, right?
Well, it can say, I am the ocean right now, and take its identity as ocean.
Yes, Swami.
But still, if you're wanting to know how does it relate to the ocean, yeah, we can answer that as conscious mind. It finds a way to relate to the ocean for its own identity. It serves the ocean. It sees the ocean like that. Oh. And that's how it dissolves in the ocean. It doesn't have to actually be placed back in the ocean to dissolve in the ocean. It's already in it. It's just a matter of seeing. It's already in it. In the case of us, conscious mind, individual, the feeling of individuality, we're already in the ocean. To dissolve in the ocean, we simply need to recognize it and submit. Oh. Okay, let's close. Final prayers in RT. Short version. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in Thee forever and ever. Humble our Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.